right, families. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. Thank you for joining us for this, our next installment of our family webinar series. Today, we're talking about all things you need to know as your student prepares to study abroad. So exciting. For any of our senior families who are on the call, you might have one more webinar, but for most families, this is the last of the academic year, and we'll get started again next year. Just like all webinars, this one is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel shortly after a day or two, and you'll also receive an email recap. Our Q&A has been turned off for now to allow us to get through all of the information that Lisa is going to share with us, and then that will open up at the end, and we'll have as many questions as we have time for at the end. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to one of our partners from Global Education, Lisa, who is going to walk us through all the things we need to know. Thank you, Lisa, for being here with us.
Thank you, Heather. Hi, everybody. It's lovely to be here today, and I am actually just going to start by sharing. So hold on one moment. All right. Perfect. So again, thank you all so much for being here today. I can't wait to speak to you about how you can work with your students and get everyone so excited for going abroad, even if you don't have them going abroad yet and they're thinking about maybe doing it in the future. This is a great opportunity to kind of learn more about the process, what we do to prepare them, what you can do to help prepare them, and what students themselves can do to prepare themselves for going abroad. So just so you know, we will also be discussing our partners who are international, also what they do, kind of what they require, things of that nature. Also, I know we're talking about summer programs, but if your student is also thinking about going abroad in January for winter, or maybe doing an exchange or going abroad for a semester, a lot of what we're going to speak about applies to that as well. So please do not think that everything that we're talking about today is tried and true and only applies to summer, because a lot of it will also apply to other types of study abroad programs. But the focus, of course, today will be on summer, as we are coming up on May and last day of classes is just right around the corner. So again, thank you, Heather. My name is Lisa Roney. I am Assistant Director of Global Education here at the Global Education Office at Reeve Center for International Studies. Quite the lengthy title and building name, but we are kind of on the outskirts of campus. If you're familiar with campus, we're kind of tucked between the campus center and across the street from the lovely Barrett Seafood. So if you are ever in town, please feel free to stop by. We are open for walk-ins all the time and would love to see you. I do want to apologize in advance. I am kind of a fast talker. I always have been. I try to work on it all the time. Doesn't always take. So I do apologize. Feel free, if you need anything repeated, just ask during the Q&A and I'm happy to. So to give you a little bit of context as to what qualifies me, I guess, to be speaking to you today, is I had my first study abroad experience during my undergraduate time at James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia, where I actually spent a summer in London. I went on to get my master's degree from Old Dominion University in Norfolk, where I got my master's in international higher education, essentially specifically so I could be in this exact position. So very happy to be here. And in that time, I also had a graduate assistantship in their Office of Study Abroad at ODU, and I was a key student in two graduate program study abroad programs. In one of them, I was an intern who essentially planned all the logistics for about 2 weeks in Hong Kong. And that was very fulfilling and rewarding and really secured my love of this industry and being in this kind of role. So very happy to have found a home here at William & Mary, where I have now been for almost 5 years, and I have been with Reeves now for almost 4 years. So very happy to be here. Want to start off by kind of explaining what our summer programs are, in case your students really haven't told you much about what they're getting into. We have our William and Mary faculty-led programs. So those are the programs where it is a William and Mary professor who is going abroad with the students, and they are teaching a course, and then there is also likely another course being taught by a faculty member or a professor at a partner institution in that city that they're going to. So we always make sure that for our programs in the summer, students are getting at least 6 credits so that they are eligible for financial aid, because 6 credits in the summer puts them at full-time status. So for those programs, they are going over with other William and Mary students and with William and Mary faculty. Third-party programs are programs through essentially what we call, or what I call, the alphabet soup providers. You have AIFS, CIEE, API, IES, all of those quote unquote companies that you see students going abroad through. That is a third-party program. So they bring back transfer credit and Call 300 through the courses that they are able to offer with partner institutions. So you will see a lot of those providers being able to set students up with classes at Trinity College, at Oxford, things like that. And then our intern fellowships is another kind of William and Mary exclusive. A wonderful colleague of mine, Ing Lu, she actually coordinates those. And we have Freeman fellowships all around Asia, and we have internship fellowships in La Plata, Argentina as well over the summer, which are fantastic opportunities that students cannot rave enough about. And of course, all 3 of these options will get students that ever coveted Call 300 attribute. So we know that this can be a very overwhelming process for everybody involved, for you, for the students, for friends trying to figure out what they want to do, if they want to do something that's with their friends or apart from their friends. So when you're looking at this, here's where you can begin with your students. So first of all, researching your options. There are so many options and places to go and ways to go to those places that are within and with outside of William and Mary. William and Mary, we have fantastic faculty-led programs, but of course that is limited to the faculty who are able to use their time and resources to spend this time abroad. So the options aren't endless just within William and Mary. And that's when we do reach out to the exchanges and these third-party providers to be able to give those students who might be looking for a more niche experience something that they are able to accommodate. So I always tell students during advising appointments, start a spreadsheet, start tracking. If you can at least narrow down a region that you want to go to. Say you know that you really have always wanted to go to Africa. Great, you can start there. At least you're not starting with the entire globe at that point. And you can start researching, come in to talk to us and say, where have students gone in the past in Africa? Where have they loved? And then we can start to help you narrow it down. Academic components is, of course, for William and Mary students, a big factor. Have they looked at their academic timeline? If they have declared a major, are they very intent on getting graduated in 4 years? Is there a little bit of wiggle room to maybe do a semester, or do they want to do something in the summer or the winter? Getting requirements taken care of abroad is wonderful. It's great. And if they can do it, fantastic. But it might kind of decrease a lot of stress and anxiety for both you and them if they focus on getting electives abroad, because it just might make the whole thing easier if they're taking classes they just want to take than classes that they're trying to actually get checked off for their specific major requirements. Financial considerations are also a big one. So there's looking at which program has the most beneficial scholarships. Out of those scholarships, which ones are need-based, which ones are merit-based? Is the program that they're looking for eligible for loans? Is it FAFSA eligible? Are there payment plans available? And those are conversations that we can have with them, that they can have with the third-party providers. There's so many different options, just like there's so many different scholarships. So again, there's a lot of research that goes into the planning part of this. The other part of this that is very important, and I have noticed this when speaking with students as well, is if their parents, if you have had the amazing, fantastic opportunity to study abroad yourself, a lot of students will say, well, my dad went here, so I want to go here, or my mom went here, so she thinks I should go here as well. 2026 is a very different landscape than it was maybe in the early 2000s. So they might want to go someplace different. Their academic interests might want to take them to a completely different part of the world. And while the familiarity of you knowing where they're going might be a huge comfort for you, understandably, that might not be what their goal is here. And for studying abroad, it's such a career focused, resume line that we really want to make sure the student is going to the place that's most beneficial for them and their individual experiences. And all four of these, pinpoints here, William and Mary can play a role or does play a role in all of these. And that's kind of what I'm going to hit on next. So whether a student goes abroad for the summer with one of our faculty-led programs or with an exchange or a third party or one of the fellowships, these are kind of just a starting list of the different offices around campus that they are going to kind of have as touch points during that planning and execution and returnee process. So of course, our office is going to be a big part of this. International Safety and Security, which is also part of the Reeve Center for International Studies. That is, our manager is Nick Vasquez, and he is phenomenal at his job. And he essentially runs the committee that overlooks every single day the geopolitical climate in the world, right? And seeing what is happening and keeping abreast of breaking news and updates and travel advisories. And knock on wood, should something happen, what are the next steps? What is the course of action to take? This team is the team that got everybody through March of 2020. So it's a great team to have, and we're so thankful to have them, and they are always available. The Advising Center is also a great resource for the students because they not only are able to help students kind of understand where study abroad might be able to fit into their academic schedule, but how their current academic performance is going to transfer abroad, essentially. How they're doing here, can sometimes become a little different once you go abroad and you're in a different environment. So kind of having those conversations with the Advising Center. Student accessibility services is a big one. If your student has any kind of accommodations, housing accommodations, religious accommodations, academic accommodations, this is a crucial office to be in touch with because the student has a very large responsibility to make sure that they are keeping everybody up to date with those accommodations. Due to HIPAA and privacy laws, SAS will not voluntarily give me information about students going abroad. So it is the student's responsibility to make sure that we know what their accommodations are so that they can be provided for accordingly. And that goes the same for third parties. They need to let them know what is happening and what they need for their accommodations when they are abroad so that it can be taken care of. Because we're happy to do it. We will do it. We will do our best. But it is not proactive information that is given between departments here at William and Mary. Financial aid and bursar's office, I'll kind of just put together a little bit, but that's where the scholarship part comes in. The scholarships, the payment plans, things like 529s for all of our Virginia residents, VMS DEP, military and veteran benefits. All of those folks are going to be the ones that you talk to if you're doing any kind of loan applications, if you're doing FAFSA, if there are need-based scholarships that are going to be posted or applied to a student account. Financial aid and bursar become very critical in that student study abroad process. And of course, the Counseling Center. The Counseling Center, we always want students to understand is a resource that they do have to them here as part of their tuition and fees at William and Mary, and to understand that going abroad is no easy feat for anybody, and that they do have this resource available to them so that they can have somebody to kind of help guide them, help them with the culture shock, and to help them understand and kind of mentally prepare maybe a little bit more for what they are about to experience. Because as we all know who have gone abroad, it can definitely be a lot. And of course, this is not a comprehensive list. Depending on the student, we're going to talk to a lot more people across the university. So How can you support students in your preparation? So one of the things I did when I was asked to give this webinar is we have peer advisors, and those are essentially student workers here at Global Education Office who have gone abroad and have shown exemplary service, and they had outstanding interviews out of a competitive applicant pool and now work in our office. And one of the things they do is they talk to students and they give them advice, and they also sometimes talk to parents. So I asked them what they thought was most beneficial coming from their families when they were abroad. So that's what these quotes you'll see on these next few slides are from our peer advisors, and I'm so proud of them. So how can you support students in their preparations for going abroad? For William and Mary programs and third-party programs, there is an application process involved. Of course, for 2026, this is done for the most part, of course, but I think it's very crucial for people to know, and I say this because I have seen this kind of misunderstanding a little bit in the past, is that especially at William and Mary and with a lot of these third-party programs, as demand does rise, there is not a sign up to study. You're not signing up to study abroad. You're applying to study abroad. Excuse me. So, our programs are, a lot of our programs internally, our faculty-led programs can be competitive. And unfortunately, students sometimes are turned away or are put on a wait list because our partners in a certain city can only have so many beds that they can accommodate for in their dorms, along with the other 50 American universities that they're housing that summer or something along that lines, right? So we do have hard numbers that we do have to adhere to. Plus there's the whole quality over quantity thing, of course. So there are application processes, and those do come with required material uploads and submission deadlines. So those are things that are very important for students and yourselves to understand. If a student is going through a third party, though, they do need to tell us. We need to know that information, and we need to know it prior to them leaving. Otherwise, we're not going to know where the student is or how they're being accounted for during that time abroad. So if they are going through one of those third-party programs, they need to register that with us via studyabroad.wm.edu. So please make sure, just double check if you have a student going abroad through one of those other companies this summer. Say, hey, did you do this? And I am hoping that 100% of those students say yes. And if they haven't, they need to. For our faculty-led programs, they have a mandatory 1-credit pre-course that happens in the semester prior to them going. And I saw some of the last names as some of you were popping in here, and I recognize some of them. So I know we have a lot of families here, I think, for some of our faculty-led summer programs. So they are currently in those 1-credit pre-courses with the faculty who is taking them abroad over the summer. And that is not only so they can get to know each other, but they can get essentially a head start on the academic work. And they are getting prepped for the culture. I think that is probably the biggest and most important part of this 1-credit pre-course is they are not just being dumped in the middle of an unknown city and an unknown country and going wild, right? They are being told what to expect from somebody who has been to the country. They are being talked to about the norms, the cultural aspects, if when they go to certain locations, what kind of clothing they should bring, how much money they should expect to bring for certain kinds of restaurants, things like that, right? So there's a lot of really, really important information that happens in that 1-credit pre-course. And because the academics are rather rigorous on those summer faculty-led programs, this is also a way to get a head start on the academics and get some readings done as well. For both program types also, of course, we're looking at financials. So financials are going to be pretty much the same both ways. It's just with William and Mary programs, William and Mary is being paid directly, and with the third party is being paid directly. But of course, for both, if you are using financial aid, there will be that touch point with William and Mary both ways to ensure that loans are distributed properly. And then, of course, passports and all necessary paperwork. Passport scans are crucial. I am dealing with that right now with some of my programs where there are certain cities, certain countries certain museums that will not sell student tickets without passport information, without passport expiration dates, full passport names, things of that nature. So please kind of make sure that you're up to date, that your students up to date on their paperwork, on their passports. We ask for information not only about accommodations, but emergency contacts, having your information, which I'm going to get into in a little bit here in a moment, but also dietary information, food allergies, if your student has an EpiPen, things like that are also critical points of information that we need to know. And third-party programs, while they might ask for it through a different portal or a different, means of communication, they're all asking for that same information. So no one, for the most part, is asking for information that somebody else isn't. It's just kind of who you're giving it to based on the kind of program that your student is doing. And I thought what Natalie down here said below, she said her parents, before she went abroad, were absolutely fantastic. They helped her with banking information, with medical appointments, because she went to, I believe, Korea for a semester. And I loved what she said because her parents really empowered her to do a lot of things on her own. Things like medical appointments, bank information that she just did not have access to. They gave her the information, but then made her run with it. And I do think that a study abroad opportunity is a great way for students to kind of get that first toe in the water for real adult responsibilities for those who haven't maybe quite had that yet, especially maybe our first and second years, because it really is eye-opening. And it's a great way for them to kind of see what is really expected of people as we get older and as jobs come around and things like that. So it really, like she said, it really helped with their independence because as they said to her, we're not going to be with you over there. We're not going to be with you in Korea. So you need to know how to do all this because if we just send you over there having done everything, how are you going to know how to access everything? So I was really grateful for that she said that. And when she used the word proactive, that made me really grateful to her family. So your students go abroad. They have flown over and you're a nervous wreck. And we completely understand. And of course you are. Why wouldn't you be? The first thing that I tell students to do is to manage expectations regarding communication. So every family dynamic is different, right? Every parent-child relationship in terms of communication can vary. However, no matter what that communication might be right now, it is going to be different when they're abroad, especially for a summer program like the ones that we're kind of focusing on a little bit more today, because they're much more action-packed. They're much more jam-packed. They're getting, I'm going to use some of these William & Mary faculty-led programs as examples, but there are some where they're getting 6 credits in 4 weeks. So for accreditation purposes, that's a lot. And that's not just sitting in a classroom for 90 hours over 6 weeks. That instruction time is taken all around the city that they're in. So there is a lot of running around in a great way, a lot of museums that we're going to, a lot of historical places, government buildings, depending on the class, theaters, things of that nature. But students are busy. And when they're not busy and they're off, they are encouraged to explore and explore with each other. And they might not be as in touch as they would be if they were just here on campus, calling or texting as they're going from, Tucker to Washington or something like that. So I always tell students to please manage expectations with your families. First of all, Wi-Fi and cell service, just like here, can be unreliable, right? So you just never know. So I don't want anybody to commit to a certain, time of day, maybe every day, because even if they go away for a weekend, where they're going, even if it's as a group, might not have great service. So that's also something to consider. If you want to, schedule times based around where they're going to be to chat, that's great. Even if it's just kind of a text every day or a picture every day, that's also great too. I'm an only child and I travel a lot. And when I was abroad before smartphones. And, we were all given burner phones that didn't have picture capabilities or anything like that. And my parents and our philosophy has always been no news is good news, right? I'm off having a great time. These programs are expensive. And there is a lot of time and energy and money put into these by you and by the student. And I hate to see students who are not embracing or not, fully taking in the world around them because they're too worried about being on their phone, FaceTiming, even friends, not even just family, but friends back home being like, oh my God, look at this, or here's pictures of what I did earlier. So I'm missing out on what I'm doing right now. So please just be flexible with their itineraries and their schedules and their class times because anything can change at the drop of a hat on study abroad. Students here at William and Mary, I have come to learn over these last almost 5 years, are real type A's, and I get it because I'm one too. So I am seeing that part of myself in all of them, and I give them this same speech. Please be flexible. Some places that students are going to go are going to be weather dependent. Some speakers, might get sick or have a family emergency. In Europe, there can be things like train strikes. So they might not be able to, go out to a location one day. If there's a rail strike, they might have to wait a week. So there's so many things that can happen. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands to just please manage those expectations about how much you're going to talk to your student while they're gone. Something else to think about in supporting them while they are abroad is that there is something called timely care. If you do not know about this, timely care is something that is a service. It's available to myself as William & Mary staff. It's available to students, to faculty. It is a 24/7 counseling service. And this is a service that if they go to it through the William & Mary website, or if they download the app, they fill out a short questionnaire, they will be connected to a licensed counselor within, I think, 5 to 7 minutes is the usual turnaround time. And again, this is 24/7. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier about things like culture shock and just kind of needing to maybe decompress in a new place. It is a great service that is provided to all William and Mary entities. And I think it is something that not a lot of students utilize, and they should. We have definitely had students going abroad who have utilized it and have been very thankful that they did because it's just lovely to have an objective third party, right? Like a therapist. So I want you all to know that that's there for them as well. One of the things that also is included is CISI insurance. So if your student is doing a William and Mary faculty-led program, actually any of these programs, they must be registered with our insurance. It is CISI insurance. It is medical insurance for the dates of their program. So they are covered medically while they are in their location. So this does not cover their flight in or their flight out, but it does cover the dates that they're there. It's, I mean, knock on wood, it's great. I've seen it in action. And it is a wonderful service that we are able to provide. A lot of third parties will also require their own insurance. And the cost of the two is so minimal that it's just having double insurance and it's fine. But just know that they do have insurance through us as well as whatever insurance they might have under you as well. So we would, probably want to, use CISI first, but it is a wonderful thing to have. And CISI does have an app. And when you have location services on, it will show you the nearest pharmacy, urgent care, hospital. So it's a wonderful thing that we are able to utilize here at William and Mary. One thing before I move on that I do want to kind of explain a little bit more because I've been talking to students about this lately. And so I thought, oh, this is a great time to bring this up. Especially with our programs and our fellowships, there is a very heavy, I guess, student concern about being abroad with the William & Mary faculty. They go abroad because they want to go with the William & Mary faculty, and then they get over there and they say, oh, I'm here with my teacher, essentially. Almost like, oh, I'm partying with my boss, for lack of a better term. What I want you all to know, which I think you all are aware of this, and I tell students to know, your what we call them program directors when they're abroad, because they're not just professors. They are an all-encompassing fairy godmother, whatever you want to call them, but they are taking care of everything while your student is abroad with them. Their number one concern is everybody's safety. So if a student has an emergency at 10 p.m., 1 a.m., they can't find their way back home, something like that, that faculty should be their first point of contact to help them. That line of faculty, of professor versus student, is much, much more blurred while they're abroad, because it is a much larger role and a much deeper relationship between the two. So please make sure your student knows that and feels comfortable, because there's nothing, I understand, more anxiety inducing than you getting a call from a student at 2 a.m. their time in Berlin saying, "Oh, I'm lost." I use that because that's an example of what's happened. When the student just had to, and the student, and I have had this happen where the student has said, "I didn't want to call the professor because I didn't want to get in trouble." And that's not going to happen. Safety is everybody's number one concern across the board for all of these. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. And as I continue to visit the pre-courses for our summer programs, I'm going to continue to reiterate that to our students as well. And of course, something else is that we do have we talk about how to prep the students and how they're going to go abroad, and how to be prepared in these locations, right? So William and Mary and third-party programs have pre-departure orientations about the locations where we can sit down and talk about exactly where they're going to be, what to expect, how to get around, and things like that. So while they will be learning it as they get there, they will be going abroad no matter who they're going with, essentially. They will be prepared for, essentially what to expect. All right. So on that note, no news is good news, right? But you still want to know what's going on. So communicating with program directors and leaders for third-party programs. So with third-party programs, of course, it can vary with each company how they're doing their communications. Some of them have one-on-one advisors for each student, depending on their location. And then when they arrive, they're going to have kind of essentially, grown-up RAs. They're going to have folks who are in charge of them in their locations, whether it's in an apartment building that the company kind of leases, or they're actually in a legitimate dormitory at a university. They're going to have that 24/7 support. And then, of course, as I was just mentioning, with the faculty-led programs, they will have that faculty director as well. Now, with the faculty-led programs here, we do have a listserv. So each faculty member who does a program is going to get an email listserv from our office before they actually travel abroad. And that listserv is going to be how they communicate with all of you. So essentially, if your student is going abroad with a William & Mary faculty, you're going to hear from that faculty member at least 3 times while they're abroad. You're going to hear from them saying, "Everyone's here safe. Can't wait to start our month in Spain." You're going to hear from them, hopefully, you're going to hear from them a second time, maybe with a picture, saying, "Oh, look at us looking over these beautiful rocks on the beaches of Barcelona. Oh my God, aren't we all beautiful? Look at us. Everything's going fantastic." And then you're going to get a third one at minimum. And that last one is going to say, "All of your students are on their way to their next destination, whether it be your house, the airport, or their next gallivanting around Europe. And I love them, but they are your problem now. I will see them on campus in August." So that is a great way to hear from folks. I myself played the role of a program director 2 years ago for a summer program. And one of my favorite parts about it wasn't necessarily sending those emails, but getting replies from parents saying how much they were loving the updates because they might not have been hearing from the student. And I'm going, oh, really? Because I can't get that student to like stop talking. Like I love them, you know? So because the students are so invested in the experience, right? So it is definitely a very well-loved service that we provide here for our programs. Something that I do want to mention that I kind of briefly touched on earlier is when I was discussing paperwork, is that that listserv is only going to include emails that the student provides to us in the required paperwork that they submit. So, and this happens a lot. It's very common. So what's going to happen is they're just going to be inputting the information, or it's going to pull over from the other system, and it's just going to be in a traditional family household. It's just going to be mom's email, and that's going to be what we put on. The faculty is going to send their first email. Mom's going to forward it to dad, and dad's going to email the professor and say, hey, can I get on this email list? No, you can't. Not without the student's express consent. The student is over 18, right? So with that, either the professor or I, probably me, because my office is the one who builds and has the administrative control of the listserv, will reach out to the student and say, hey, can this person essentially get updates about you? Can this person be added to the listserv? And 9.9 times out of 10, the student will say, oh yeah, that's just my dad. Oh yeah, that's just my grandpa. That's fine. So I want you to understand that as well. So I think it's a great service we provide. But again, this comes back to our number one concern for everybody is everybody's safety. Another great option that we do have is if you want to follow WM Abroad on Instagram. We highlight faculty-led programs whenever our office gets photos from our students or our faculty. Try to post those on Instagram, either as posts or as stories. And sometimes faculty-led programs, if the faculty is feeling spunky enough to do it, they might create their own account for the program. And sometimes they'll have students run it as part of their grade. So, and if they talk about that, if they decide to do that, they usually will put it in the listserv, or we will highlight it on the WM Abroad Instagram. So always be on the lookout for that. And then third-party providers, they'll have their own Instagram accounts, and they usually kind of every couple weeks will highlight a different program, or they'll have different students kind of do a spotlight, kind of a day in the life of. So definitely, if your student is going through a third party, make sure that you are following that account, because you never know when you're going to see your student pop up on it. Ours too. All right. Supporting your students when they return. So there always is return culture shock, especially the longer students abroad, the more intense that reverse culture shock can be. So, embrace the stories your students have. They might not shut up for a while about where they go. And that's a really, really good thing. They might have newfound slang. They might start saying flat instead of apartment, or loo instead of bathroom. And that's okay. That means that it worked, that they had the cultural immersion that they went over there for. So just make sure that you're asking questions, be active in your learning more about the cultures, really, really show that what they are bringing back is benefiting the family, because it's a really great experience for everybody to kind of live through if they were not able to go. A big part, and this is kind of why I highlighted Ava's quote here, was helping them get back kind of into the routine and out of that weird funk, essentially. So as Ava told me, she went to Florence. She's actually done a few, I think, but she went to Florence with William and Mary. And she said that her family did a great job at realizing how, when she needed her space and when she needed friendship, because her program, that's right, she did Florence and then she did this one semester program. Her program ended in April. So she was home like a full month before any of her friends left campus, any of her friends in town got home from their respective colleges. So she kind of had that really weird, time in between, her abroad time ending and kind of real life beginning again. And her family was very cognizant of that and very adaptable to it. And so I think that was a really good point that she made, and her family did a really great job at recognizing that not only did you just end this absolutely life-changing, incredible time, but you're also not just like going back the next day into the swing of things right off the bat. You're going back into something kind of offbeat for yourself. So, patience and empathy through that as well, I think is crucial to their reacclimation, to their mental health, and to just, reassuring that this was an absolutely worthwhile and amazing experience. So, on that note, I just want to thank you all very much, and I am ready for any questions that folks might have.
Okay, I think I've just got the Q&A turned back on. So thank you so much, Lisa. That was such a wonderful presentation. So much good info in there across the spectrum. So thank you for sharing. So if anyone has questions, oh, some people have been holding on to them. I can tell. I think I just got a good, robust Q&A in there. Okay. While everyone is thinking, I'll go ahead and ask part of this one. How are families selected for homestay, and what security checks are done in advance to ensure safe people, environment, and then what plans are in place should a safety situation arise?
Of course. So homestays are vetted by our partners on the ground in the respective countries. So for example, this summer we have a program in Berlin, in Florence, and I believe our programs in Montpellier and Cadiz maybe are homestays. And so those are vetted through their universities, through background checks. They go through an application process, things of that nature. And then the students, the families and the students get well, intensive to a point, but they get questionnaires in order to match them. So for example, the one that I have seen, like for Florence, it talks about, are you smoking? Are you a smoker? Are you okay with people who smoke? Are you okay with kids? Are you okay with pets? If you're not okay with pets, which ones aren't you okay with? Are there any allergies? What kind of food allergies or restrictions do you have? And then in the meantime, the families are also getting those kind of questionnaires, but on the flip side, are you okay cooking for someone with severe allergies? Are you okay with a student who might smoke? Kind of, are you okay with maybe a student who is more of a night owl? So, and then they work together, and then the university, the partner works to combine to make those homestays, right? To make those collaborations. So, and there is always kind of that time at the more beginning of the program where if there are any kind of concerns, any kind of, misunderstandings, there is time to kind of work that out and kind of have mediations, because a lot of times we have found out that it is just cultural misunderstandings and that everything's fine. It's just no one wants to step on each other's toes. It's almost like over politeness is where there can be misunderstanding. So, but if anyone does need to be replaced, or I should say reassigned, then that does happen, and the partners do take care of that. In terms of security, there is no one plan in place because anything can happen at any time. So each plan is assessed at the time of the event. If something were to happen, knock on wood, if students were needed to say evacuate. But I cannot sit here, unfortunately, and say, here is what would happen if this happened, because every situation is unique.
Yep. And we know that our team is very well versed in reacting to
Yeah.
those instances. I know you referenced at the beginning, this team is one that handled COVID-19 in 2020. And I saw that firsthand sitting kind of from the sidelines. And so I know that they're very well versed in adapting to these scenarios. And there is a question that's come up multiple times in the Q&A that I'll ask, and I think it's probably related to different locations, but some is the same location. Thinking about flights and fuel and grounding of flights to locations, is that a conversation that's come up in terms of prep, or what happens if a student can't get to their study abroad destination because flights have been grounded?
So Flights are the responsibility of the students and the families, of course. However, we have not, I mean, we understand that there have been fuel concerns. We always tell students to kind of set aside, if possible, contingency emergency funds should they need to be delayed a day or two due to any kind of groundings. Something that I meant to mention, and I apologize when I was talking about the CISI insurance, is that we also strongly recommend that students get travel insurance for these exact kind of reasons. So should there be travel delays or anything like that, that it is covered and that it would be for a covered reason. That would be one of the covered reasons if they needed to stay for a couple nights, things like that. We have had that happen many times before where a student might be delayed a couple days. They're not going to be turned away at the gate, for lack of a better word, once they arrive in, say, Prague or whatever, or once they realize that the flight is now good. And this is where communication is key. So the student needs to be, at this point, especially with William and Mary program specifically, at this point, the student will have the faculty's cell phone number. They already should be well versed in their email address, but primarily their cell phone number at this point. They should be in constant contact with that faculty and giving them updates and letting them know. And then should the family and the faculty or the family and the student decide, hey, we want to just turn around or we want to, press on, then that is the conversation at that time, if that makes sense. But again, that is something that there is no black and white, here's what will happen when that happens, because every situation is different. We've seen people be delayed 2 days and then get there 2 days late. It happens, just like it would for any kind of vacation. So that is why we do just highly recommend also having travel insurance, because the William and Mary's policy is only medical.
Okay. On that same vein, I've got a few questions about CISI insurance. One being, has paperwork about CISI insurance gone out because parent doesn't recall helping student with it, or is it something that they're just automatically signed up for? They just covered under CISI. And then on that, if they're going through a third party, do they need to take any extra steps to be double covered under both?
Great question. And I apologize for not covering that. So the student is automatically enrolled in CISI. When they go abroad with us, with William Mary, it is part of the program fee that you have paid for the program. So the insurance is already part of that. The student will be enrolled about 10 days, 7 days prior to the program date, and they will get the policy emailed to them. However, fun fact, if you just go to William Mary's site and just type in CISI in the search bar, the policy will come up and you will have access to it. Each student's policy is not different. The entire William and Mary group is one policy, and what differentiates your student from me traveling is name and date of birth. So they will be registered within a week, probably prior to them going is when our finance team registers them. And then, like I said, they will get that emailed to their William and Mary email address. In terms of the kind of double registering, that is one of the reasons that they also have to register their third party program with us at studyabroad.wm.edu, because that triggers a few things. That is going to trigger the administration fee for them going abroad with William and Mary, because there's transfer credits involved, there's financial aid usually involved, there's insurance involved, and the insurance is one of the other things that is going to trigger. So yes,
Okay.
to all that is yes, it's going to happen. It's going to happen regardless.
Okay.
There's nothing that you as parents need to do to make it happen.
Wonderful. I'm proud of myself. I'm going through these questions and I'm just finding ones that are bouncing right off of one another. You mentioned students doing third-party programs having to notify William and Mary that they're doing a third-party program. Is there any instance in which a third-party program would not be approved or their participation would not be approved? Are there certain providers that I know William and Mary offers many connections to third-party programs, but is there any scenario in which one would not be approved?
Well, so the overall answer to that is yes. However, there's always exceptions. So you can look at the Study Abroad website and see the whole list of ones that have been approved, that students have used, things of that nature. If the one your student is interested in is not on that list, the word petition is used, and it sounds scary, but essentially it's just a form that the student fills out of what program they want to do, where it goes, and a few other questions. So our office can investigate it a little bit more. When ones are not accepted, approved, it's because it's not accredited. So folks will find an amazing program and it does not issue a transcript from an accrediting university. That is the biggest rejection, essentially. Another issue might be is if the country or the location that they want to go to, and this is where the International Security and Safety Committee comes into play, is if it is, I think, a travel level 4 or 5. If it's someplace that students should not be going. But again, that is then a petition and a committee meeting and essentially a hearing with the student. Why do you need to go to this place? What is happening there that you need to be a part of? Are you aware of these things? So that's also not always a hard no. It probably will be a no, but again, that is a conversation that will be had. But the accreditation part is why something wouldn't get approved.
Wonderful. Great context.
Yeah.
I got a question here that I would love to know the answer to. For students who are staying with host families, do parents or students need to prepare for gifts for the host family as a token of appreciation? And if so, do you have any suggestions?
That is a great question. I definitely think you should. And if you are staying with a host family and your student is doing one of our faculty-led programs, I'm hoping that the faculty is talking to them about this, talking to the student about this. I would recommend the same thing that I bring when I go internationally and I'm meeting with our partners. Bring something local that is packable. And easy to transport. So I would bring, so I sometimes I'll go over to the William Mary campus store and see what I can get. You know what I mean? So even if that's like a William and Mary notebook or a pennant or something that I can easily throw into my suitcase, but can be nicely wrapped if I need to. Even if you wanted to have them bring something over like a Williamsburg like coffee mug, because you can wrap that up in underwear and socks, right? So something I think sentimental to your home, but is also usable, I think is like the perfect sweet spot of an appreciation gift.
Oh, for
That's a great.
sure. I have some of our partners in St. Andrews have come over and I've met with them, and I have a St. Andrews coaster that I just love. And I'm like, I know that she got a pack of 4 coasters and then she divvied out those coasters to all of us, but I use it
But
and I
I
love
would
it.
got that poster. Correct. Yes.
Exactly. So I don't think grand gestures, but I think something that reminds them of the student that spent some time in their home and where they were from, I think is wonderful.
Yes. I took over William and Mary like tea, almost like a coaster set, like a tea kettle, like hand cloth
Hmm.
set once. So yeah, anything that's not going to really put the student out in terms of packing, but can also kind of be, small and sentimental.
Wonderful. Question here. My student would like to go a few days earlier or maybe stay a bit after the planned time abroad. Is this possible and how is that handled?
That's you guys. So I tell students, the faculty tells students, these are the program dates. This is where you'll be. Anything outside of that is 100% up to you. One of the things, if this is for William and Mary with that pre-course, one of the things discussed is if you're traveling before or after, great, but here's where you need to be, kind of by this time on this date. So it's kind of the student's responsibility to know from our conversations where they need to be or when they need to leave. So a lot of these places, even with homestays, because homestays have turnaround sometimes, just like hotels. So I know for our Florence program, they have to be out, I think, by like 10 a.m. on that last day. And one of the paperwork aspects that I was discussing earlier is, we ask students for their flight, their arrival and departure details. And it's called, for shorthand, I say, I need your flight information, but it's arrival and departure because it might be the train Italy from Paris because of this exact reason. And one of the reasons we ask that is that we need to know that the student acknowledges and has plans to leave those accommodations on those dates because the program has paid for this and there's no, oh, can you just add $200 onto my kid's program so he can stay there 2 nights before? Mm-mm. So anything that they want to do before or after, 100% family and students judgment.
Okay, good to know. I've got a couple rapid fire questions for you, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
These are going to be easy to answer, I believe. Does the university provide transportation to and from the airport upon arrival and departure to the country they have traveled to?
Each program is different. Usually
How will
not
how will they find out that information?
in the pre-course. The
Okay.
pre-course, everybody tells them they get directions on where to go, how to get there. They also will have a group chat with directions, and a lot of them are also going to be arriving on the same flights. And that's another reason for the pre-course. So, yep.
Leads right into my next question. Are students required to travel together with other program participants?
Nope. Students actually, the reason that we don't book flights all grouped together because everyone's coming from different places, going to different places after. We have students who live in California. We're not going to make them come to Richmond just to then go to Australia. So everyone can do what they want. It is at their own comfort if they want to disclose their flight information to each other in the pre-course so that they can all try, so that some of them can travel together, but they are not required to, no.
Okay. We have, it looks like two boys going to study abroad, one in Dublin and one in St. Andrews. They're trying to book flights. When will we know what time they are supposed to report on their first day?
Usually, so that sounds like that's two totally different programs with two totally different, itineraries. However, I will say the first day is you get there when you can get there. So the first day is pretty much just a check-in. I'm assuming that these are our two programs for St. Andrews and for Dublin, the faculty led, our Dublin Global Business Minor. Get there when you get there. I know that most European flights from the US to there, to that side of Europe, to those islands, to the UK and to Ireland, they're going to get you there between 7 a.m. and 12 p.m. So that's when you get there. That first day is the arrival day. So then everything is going to get started like that later that evening or the next day. But of course, that day is built in with that contingency of delays.
Okay, good to know. All right, that wraps us up. Thank you so much, Lisa. Such wonderful information. I'll just add to families, if you have more questions and you're curious, I highly encourage you to have a conversation with your student. Students are going to be getting most, if not all, of this information, so great conversations to have with them and put them in the driver's seat of asking some of those follow-up questions if you have them, because they will be in the driver's seat of their experience while they are studying abroad. So wonderful to try that out with them now. Thank you so much, Lisa. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see everybody else on the next one. Bye,
Thank you for
everyone.
having me. Great day.